Picture this. You're standing in a grocery store. It's a Tuesday afternoon. You're minding your own business, picking up milk and bread, maybe some vegetables for dinner. And then someone starts screaming, pointing at you, calling you a thief, in front of everyone. Strangers pull out their phones. They're recording you. And you have no idea what's happening. This isn't just a nightmare. This is exactly what happened to Marcus and Elena Rivera. And before this day was over, security cameras would reveal a truth so disturbing, so calculated, that it would shake an entire community. Stay with me, because what you're about to hear isn't just a story about a false accusation. It's a story about prejudice, about courage, and about how one woman's hatred almost destroyed two innocent lives. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all began. It was an ordinary Tuesday. The kind of day that feels forgettable until it isn't. Marcus Rivera, a military lieutenant, had just finished his shift at the base. He was still in uniform, that crisp military look that usually made people nod with respect as he passed by. His wife, Elena, was 6 months pregnant with their first child. You could see it in the way she walked, one hand always resting on her belly, protective and gentle. They needed groceries. Simple, right? Just a regular errand that millions of people do every single day without incident. The store they chose was Morrison's Market, a small neighborhood place where the owner knew your name and the cashiers asked about your family. It was the kind of store that felt safe, comfortable. The kind of place where nothing bad was supposed to happen. Marcus held the door open for Elena. She smiled at him. That private smile couples share when they're happy and don't need to say anything out loud. They grabbed a shopping cart and started making their way through the aisles. Elena had made a list that morning. Fruits, vegetables, whole grain bread, and those prenatal vitamins her doctor recommended. They moved slowly because Elena got tired easily these days. Every few minutes, Marcus would ask, "You okay? Need to sit down?" And every time, she'd shake her head and smile. "I'm fine. Stop worrying." They talked about baby names, discussed whether they should paint the nursery yellow or mint green, laughed about how their lives were about to completely change. They were happy, genuinely, peacefully happy. They had no idea that someone was watching them. Her name was Patricia Webb. She'd walked into Morrison's Market about 10 minutes after Marcus and Elena. She had a shopping basket in her hand, but if you'd been paying attention, really paying attention, you would have noticed something strange. She wasn't focused on her shopping. She was focused on them. She watched Marcus guide Elena around a display she'd almost bumped into. She watched them look at baby bottles together, holding them up to the light, imagining their child using them. She watched them smile at each other, and something inside her twisted. I wish I could explain what goes through someone's mind in a moment like that. What makes a person look at two strangers who are doing absolutely nothing wrong and decide, "I'm going to hurt them"? Was it the color of their skin? Was it jealousy? Was it just pure, senseless hatred? Whatever it was, Patricia had made a decision. She reached into her own basket and pulled out a bottle of vitamins. Expensive ones, $40, the kind you think twice about buying. She held it in her hand, looking around the store. There was only one employee visible at the front counter, and he was busy helping another customer. Morrison's Market had recently installed security cameras after a theft incident 3 months earlier, but they were small, tucked into corners. Not the big, obvious kind you see in chain stores. Patricia had shopped there before. She'd never noticed them. She thought the coast was clear. Marcus and Elena had moved a few feet away from their cart to look at something on a shelf. Their cart sat unattended in the aisle. Just for a moment. Just long enough. Patricia walked past their cart. Her heart was racing. And then quickly, deliberately, she dropped that $40 bottle of vitamins right into their cart. She buried it slightly under the items they'd already picked up. Her hands were shaking, but she did it. She actually did it. And then she waited. Marcus and Elena finished their shopping. They had no idea, absolutely no idea, what had just been planted in their cart. They grabbed the last few items on their list and headed toward the checkout counter. That's when Patricia struck. The scream that came out of her mouth was so sudden, so loud, that everyone in the store jumped. It echoed off the walls. It made people drop what they were holding. "Thief! They stole from me!" Marcus and Elena stopped dead in their tracks. Elena's hand flew to her belly. That instinctive protective gesture mothers make. Marcus turned around, completely confused, trying to figure out what was happening. Patricia was pointing directly at them. Her face was red, her finger was shaking, and she was screaming words that made Elena's blood run cold. "I saw them! These people took my vitamins right out of my basket! Thieves! Somebody call the police!" The small store suddenly felt suffocating. Other shoppers stopped what they were doing. Some moved closer. Several pulled out their phones and started recording. Do you understand what that moment must have felt like? You're standing there. You've done nothing wrong. Nothing. And someone is screaming at you, calling you a thief in front of dozens of strangers. Phones are pointed at you. People are staring, judging. Elena felt her face grow hot. Not with anger, with shame. That deep, burning shame that comes when you're being accused of something you didn't do, but can't immediately prove your innocence. Her hands were shaking. Marcus tried to speak, to ask what this woman was talking about, but Patricia just got louder. "Check their cart! They have my property! I want them arrested!" Tom Morrison, the owner, came rushing from the back office when he heard the commotion. He was an older man who'd run this store for 20 years. He knew Marcus and Elena. They'd shopped here many times before. They'd never caused any problems. They were good people. But here was this woman, screaming and causing a scene, and she seemed absolutely certain about her accusation. Tom didn't know what to think. Marcus tried to explain. He used that calm, controlled voice he'd learned in the military, the voice you use when you're trying not to let your anger show. "Sir, we haven't taken anything that doesn't belong to us. I don't know what she's talking about." Elena stood beside him, tears starting to form in her eyes. She couldn't believe this was happening. 6 months pregnant, standing in a grocery store, being called a thief. Patricia demanded they check the cart. She seemed so confident. She described the vitamin bottle down to the exact brand and size. "It's in there. I know it's in there. Check it." One of the store employees walked over to their cart. And there it was, right there, nestled between their other items. A $40 bottle of vitamins. Elena gasped. She'd never seen that bottle before in her life. "That's not ours," Marcus said immediately. "We didn't put that there." But Patricia was already acting like she'd won. "See, I told you. I want an apology. I want them arrested." The other shoppers were murmuring now. Some looked at Marcus and Elena with suspicion. Others looked uncomfortable, like they wanted to be anywhere but there. Phone cameras were still recording, catching every horrible moment. Elena started crying. Not loud sobs, quiet tears that rolled down her cheeks. She felt humiliated, exposed, standing there in front of all these strangers while someone destroyed her dignity with lies. Marcus put his arm around her. He was trying to comfort her while also trying to figure out how that bottle got in their cart, because he knew they hadn't put it there. And that's when Tom remembered something. He held up his hands. "Everyone, please, calm down. There's a way to figure out exactly what happened here." Patricia's confident expression flickered, just for a second. "We have security cameras," Tom said, and the color drained from Patricia's face. She'd been so focused on causing a scene, so sure that this small neighborhood store wouldn't have security footage, she hadn't even considered the possibility of cameras. "Cameras aren't necessary," she said quickly. "I know what I saw with my own eyes." But Tom was already heading to his office. "Ma'am, if you're certain about what happened, then the cameras will prove it. Everyone involved, please come with me." Marcus and Elena followed immediately. They knew the cameras would prove their innocence. They had nothing to hide. Patricia hesitated. Her feet seemed glued to the floor. But she had no choice. If she refused, it would look suspicious. So she followed, her mind racing to find a way out of this situation she'd created. The office was cramped with all of them inside. Tom sat at his desk and pulled up the security footage on his computer. He rewound it to about 20 minutes earlier. The footage was clear, crystal clear. Everyone watched Marcus and Elena walk into the store. They watched them get their cart and move through the aisles, shopping normally, picking up items, reading labels, talking to each other, just being a regular couple doing regular things. Then Patricia appeared in the footage. They watched her watch them. They saw her pull the vitamin bottle from her own basket. They saw her look around. That guilty look people have when they're checking if anyone's watching. And then, right there on camera, they watched Patricia walk up to Marcus and Elena's unattended cart and drop the vitamin bottle inside. The office was silent. Absolutely silent except for the sound of the computer fan humming. Elena let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Marcus shook his head in disbelief. Tom replayed the footage, just to make sure everyone saw it clearly. There was no doubt. None. Patricia had deliberately planted that item in their cart and then falsely accused them of theft. Patricia tried to stammer out an excuse. The camera angle is misleading. It's not what it looks like. But the footage was undeniable. There was no other way to interpret what everyone had just witnessed. Tom's expression went from confused to angry. He turned to Marcus and Elena. I am so sorry. I should have checked the cameras first before letting this escalate. Marcus accepted the apology, but his focus was on Patricia now. He looked at her, really looked at her, and asked the question that was burning in everyone's mind. Why? Why would you do this to us? Patricia had no answer. She just stood there, trapped by her own actions, caught on camera committing a crime she'd tried to pin on someone else. Tom called the police. While they waited, Patricia tried to leave. She mumbled something about needing to go, about this being a misunderstanding, but Tom blocked the office door. You need to stay until the police arrive. Word had already spread through the small store about what the cameras had shown. The customers who'd been recording earlier were still there. Their phones now capturing a very different story than the one Patricia had tried to create. 2 police officers arrived within 15 minutes. Tom showed them the security footage. They watched it twice, taking notes. Then they spoke with Marcus, Elena, and Patricia separately. Marcus explained everything. He showed them his military ID and gave them a clear timeline. Elena, still shaken, told them how humiliating it had been, how she'd done nothing wrong, how she was just shopping for groceries and items for their baby. When the officers spoke to Patricia, she tried to play the victim. She claimed it was all a mistake, that she'd gotten confused, but the officers had seen the footage. They'd watched her deliberately plant the item and then accuse Marcus and Elena. This wasn't confusion. This was intentional. The officers arrested Patricia right there in the store. They read her rights, put handcuffs on her wrists. You're being charged with filing a false police report and attempted theft by deception. Other charges may follow. As they walked her out of the store, the customers who'd witnessed everything watched in silence. Some of the same people who'd looked at Marcus and Elena with suspicion earlier now looked ashamed. The phones that had recorded the accusation now recorded the arrest. Marcus and Elena stood there for a moment, still processing, still trying to understand what had just happened to them. Tom offered them their groceries free of charge. Marcus politely declined. He just wanted to pay and leave. They'd been through enough. They went home that day, shaken, upset. Elena couldn't stop thinking about how those people had looked at her, how they'd believed, even for a moment, that she was a thief. Marcus was angry, but he tried to stay calm for Elena's sake. He knew stress wasn't good for the baby. That night, they talked about what to do next. They could try to forget about it and move on, or they could take legal action. The more they thought about it, the more they realized they couldn't just let it go. What Patricia had done wasn't just mean or embarrassing. It was illegal, and it could have ruined their lives if not for those security cameras. They decided to hire a lawyer. The lawyer they found specialized in defamation cases. When he heard their story and saw the security footage, he told them they had a strong case. This woman committed several crimes, he explained. She filed a false police report. She attempted fraud by planting evidence, and she defamed your character by publicly calling you thieves in front of witnesses. The lawyer filed a civil lawsuit against Patricia for defamation. The lawsuit stated that Patricia had falsely accused them in front of witnesses and that this accusation had harmed their reputation. Even though the truth came out quickly, the damage had been done. People had heard her call them thieves. People had looked at them with suspicion and judgment. The lawsuit asked for a significant amount of money in damages. It also detailed the emotional distress Elena had experienced, particularly as a pregnant woman who'd been put through such a stressful situation. Patricia hired her own lawyer, but she didn't have much of a defense. The security footage was right there. Clear as day. Multiple witnesses had heard her false accusations. The case against her was solid. The criminal charges moved forward too. The district attorney decided to prosecute. Patricia was facing real legal consequences for what she'd done. Her lawyer tried to negotiate a plea deal, but Marcus and Elena weren't interested in going easy on her. They wanted people to know that false accusations have serious consequences. They wanted justice. The criminal trial happened first. It wasn't long or complicated because the evidence was so clear. The prosecution presented the security footage, witness testimony from Tom and the store employees, statements from Marcus and Elena. Patricia's defense tried to argue that she'd made an honest mistake, that she genuinely believed her vitamins had been taken. But the security footage destroyed that argument. The video clearly showed her taking the vitamins from her own basket and deliberately placing them in Marcus and Elena's cart. There was no way to interpret that as an honest mistake. The jury didn't take long to reach a verdict. Guilty, guilty of filing a false police report, guilty of attempted fraud. The judge sentenced her to 6 months in jail, though some could be served through work release. She also received probation and community service hours. But the criminal trial was just the beginning. The civil lawsuit for defamation was even more serious for Patricia's wallet. The civil trial focused on the damage Patricia's false accusations had caused. Marcus and Elena's lawyer presented evidence of the emotional distress they'd suffered. Elena's doctor testified about the stress levels she'd experienced in the weeks following the incident, how stress can affect pregnancy. The lawyer argued that this kind of false accusation could have destroyed their reputations, if not for the security cameras. He pointed out that Marcus's military career could have been affected if there'd been any doubt about his character. He emphasized that Elena had been 6 months pregnant, that she'd been put through an incredibly stressful situation that could have affected her health and her baby's health. Patricia's lawyer tried to argue that the damages being requested were too high, that his client had already been punished through the criminal justice system. But the jury didn't see it that way. After deliberating, the jury awarded Marcus and Elena a substantial sum. The total was enough to cover their legal fees, compensation for emotional distress, and punitive damages meant to punish Patricia for her actions and deter others from doing similar things. The amount was reported to be in the 6-figure range. Some reports said it was close to $300,000. Patricia's face, when the verdict was read, showed the reality sinking in. She had let her prejudice and cruelty lead her to commit a crime, and now she was paying the price. But the consequences didn't stop there. Patricia's employer, after learning about the case and seeing the security footage, fired her. They released a statement saying her actions didn't reflect their company values. Her reputation was destroyed. Anyone who searched her name online would find articles about what she'd done. Future employers would see it. Future landlords would see it. She had to declare bankruptcy because she couldn't pay the full amount of the civil judgment. Her wages would be garnished for years to come, with a portion of anything she earned going to Marcus and Elena until the debt was paid. Some people might say she got what she deserved. Others might argue that the punishment was too much. But most people agreed that her actions had been cruel and could have had devastating consequences for an innocent couple. Marcus and Elena requested privacy after the trials ended. Elena gave birth to a healthy baby girl about 3 months after the civil trial. The couple was relieved to finally have something positive to focus on after the nightmare they'd been through. The money from the lawsuit settlement was put toward their daughter's future and paying off their house. They didn't do interviews. They didn't try to get attention. They just wanted to move on with their lives. Tom's grocery store continued to serve the neighborhood. He kept the security cameras and even upgraded them to a better system. He told people he was grateful the cameras had been there that day. He couldn't imagine what would have happened to Marcus and Elena without that proof of their innocence. The case became a reference point in legal circles for discussions about defamation and false accusations. Community groups talked about it when discussing racial profiling and prejudice. As for Patricia, she served her jail time and began her probation period. There were no redemption stories or public apologies. She faded from public attention, left to deal with the consequences of her actions privately. This story teaches us several important lessons. First, the truth matters. Evidence matters. Those security cameras were the difference between justice and disaster. Without them, it would have been Patricia's word against Marcus and Elena's. Even though they were innocent, the doubt might have followed them forever. Second, False accusations are serious crimes with serious consequences. Patricia probably thought she'd get away with her plan. She was wrong, and it cost her everything: her job, her reputation, her freedom, hundreds of thousands of dollars, all because she decided to target two innocent people. Third, prejudice and racism have real victims. Marcus and Elena were going about their normal day when someone decided to target them based on nothing but hate. They suffered real trauma from that experience. Elena had to deal with that stress while pregnant. Marcus had to watch his wife be humiliated and couldn't protect her until the cameras revealed the truth. Fourth, standing up for yourself matters. Marcus and Elena could have just accepted Tom's apology and moved on. Many people would have, but they chose to fight back. They chose to hold Patricia accountable. And because of that choice, Patricia faced real consequences. The incident at that grocery store lasted less than an hour from start to finish, but its impact reached far beyond that Tuesday afternoon. It became a legal case study, a conversation starter about serious issues in our society. For Marcus and Elena, it was probably one of the worst experiences of their lives, at least until the truth came out. Being falsely accused in public, especially when you're doing nothing wrong, is a humiliation that's hard to describe. But because of security cameras and a store owner who wanted the truth, they got justice, they got vindication, and they got to move forward with their lives, knowing that the person who tried to harm them faced real consequences. For everyone else, this story serves as a reminder to seek truth before making judgments, a reminder that our actions have consequences, a reminder that in a world with cameras everywhere, lies are harder to maintain than ever before. The story of Marcus, Elena, and Patricia is one that will be referenced for years to come, not because it's unique, but because it represents a problem that needs to stop. False accusations, racial profiling, prejudice-driven actions, they hurt real people. This time, those real people fought back, and they won. That security footage saved them, those small cameras tucked into corners that Patricia never noticed. They captured everything, every deliberate movement, every calculated lie, and they revealed the truth when it mattered most. Think about that the next time you're quick to judge someone. The next time you hear an accusation and feel that pull to believe it without question. The next time you see something that doesn't look quite right. Because somewhere, right now, there might be a Marcus and Elena. Good people, innocent people, just trying to buy groceries and live their lives. And somewhere, there might be a Patricia, someone ready to weaponize lies because of hate. The difference between justice and tragedy, sometimes it's as simple as a security camera that no one knew was watching. Sometimes it's a store owner brave enough to say, let's check the footage before we ruin someone's life. Sometimes it's a couple brave enough to say, we won't let this go. We will fight for justice. Marcus and Elena got their justice. They got their truth, they got their daughter, they got their life back. But how many others aren't so lucky? How many times has this happened without cameras, without proof, without anyone caring enough to dig for the truth? That's the question this story leaves us with. That's the weight it carries. And that's why it's a story worth telling, worth remembering, worth learning from. Because the next time you hear someone scream thief in a grocery store, you'll remember Marcus and Elena. You'll remember that things aren't always what they seem. You'll remember that the truth matters more than the loudest voice in the room. And maybe, just maybe, you'll be the person who says, wait, let's check the cameras first. That's how we change things. One moment of patience, one demand for truth, one refusal to let prejudice win. Marcus and Elena won their battle. But the war against false accusations, against prejudice, against people like Patricia who weaponize hate, that war continues. And it needs all of us to fight it. One grocery store, one Tuesday afternoon, one security camera. Sometimes that's all it takes to reveal the truth. Let's make sure we're always on the side of truth, always on the side of justice, always on the side of people who are just trying to buy groceries in peace. Because that shouldn't be too much to ask. That should be the bare minimum of human decency. Remember Marcus and Elena. Remember their courage. Remember their justice. And remember that truth, when we fight for it, can prevail. If this story moved you, if it made you think, If it made you feel something, don't just watch and leave. Hit that subscribe button right now. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment telling me what you thought. Did justice truly prevail here? What would you have done in Marcus and Elena's shoes? Your voice matters. Your engagement helps stories like this reach people who need to hear them. So like, share, subscribe, and let's keep fighting for truth together. I'll see you in the next one.